Here is my disclaimer. The following information was obtained from historical records, eyewitness accounts, other information sources, and including my own opinion. Since I was not always there at the time to verify it, it may or may not be correct. Drag racing in the early to mid-1960s, top fuel engines began to find their way into bodied cars with altered wheelbases to form the first funny cars. Funny car as a class traces its roots to superstock through to A factory experimental or AFX, which NHRA introduced in 1962, and ultimately XS or experimental stock. In 1965, at the AHRA Winter Nationals, 7 Hemi-powered Chryslers showed up, all with altered wheelbases that led to the term funny car because they looked funny compared to a factory stock car. The cars began to improve, including replacing the steel body with fiberglass. In 1969, the NHRA created an official funny car class in top fuel, and the class quickly gained in popularity. Here are just a few of the famous and not so famous funny cars of the first 10 years. Here is the Bounty Hunter, owned by Connie Coletta from Mount Clemens, Michigan. The 1969 Ford Mustang bodied car shown here with a Boss 429 was replaced with a SOHC 427. In July 1969 it ran a 732 at 196 miles per hour in Saginaw, Michigan. This 1969 GTO is owned by Carl, Don and Roy Gay from Dickinson, Texas. It was powered by a supercharged Nitro 427 Chevrolet. In 1969 at Crofton, Maryland it ran a 803. This 1970 Plymouth Barracuda by John Butera was owned by Don Schumacher from Park Ridge, Illinois. Powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Ed Pink Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission. At Orange County in November 1970 it ran a 686. This is the 1971 Chevrolet Vega owned by Richard Bays and Frank Rupert from Cerritos, California. It was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission. On May 6, 1972 at Orange County, California it ran a 686 at 213 miles per hour. Here is the Blue Max owned by Harry Schmidt from Dallas, Texas. The Ford Mustang by Don Hardy was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi. In November 1970 Jake Johnson ran a 672 at 217 miles per hour at the manufacturer's meet at Orange County. Here is the 1967 Pontiac Firebird owned by Gordon Mineo from Huntington Beach, California. It was powered with a supercharged Nitro 427 Chevrolet. That is Gordon's wife in the picture. This 1968 Plymouth Barracuda is owned by John Mazmanian from Whittier, California. It was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi by Keith Black. On July 19, 1969 it ran a 739 at 205 miles per hour. This is the Saddleback Dodge owned by Charlie Allen from Covina, California. The 1968 Dodge Dart is powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi by Keith Black. On May 11, 1969 in Suffolk, Virginia it ran a 729 at 199 miles per hour. Here is Gene Snow from Fort Worth, Texas in the Revel Snow 1972 Dodge Charger. It was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi by Ed Pink with a 2-speed manual transmission. In Ontario, California on November 17, 1973 it ran a 634. This 1968 Plymouth Barracuda is owned by Tom McEwen from Fountain Valley, California. Powered by a supercharged Nitro 392 Chrysler Hemi by Tim Beebe with direct drive. On September 31, 1969 in Indianapolis it ran a 747 at 206 miles per hour. Here is the Durachrome Bug, owned by Warren Gunter from Torrance, California. The 1971 Volkswagen Beetle was powered by a supercharged Nitro 427 Chevrolet by Warren Gunter with a 2-speed manual transmission. At Numidia, Pennsylvania in July 1971 it ran a 750. This is the Grant Rambler Rebel SST owned by Hayden Profit from Westminster, California. It is a 1967 AMC Rebel by Logie Stamping Company. Powered by a supercharged Nitro 438 AMC with a 3-speed manual transmission. In 1970 it ran a 789 at 189 miles per hour. I read where Eddie Sharpman from Cleveland, Ohio had the Loggy brothers build him this new Cougar for 1969. It cost $20,000 to build. The car had a 118-inch wheelbase. The body was built by Fiberglass Ltd. Powering the car was a 1,500 horsepower SOHC Ford that burned 70% nitro. On July 23, 1969 in Atco, New Jersey it ran a 746. Where this car cost $20,000 to build, on today's funny cars the aero carbon fiber bodies alone cost $70,000 each. Kingfish is a 1970 Plymouth Barracuda owned by Larry Arnold from Memphis, Tennessee. Powered by a supercharged Nitro 482 Chrysler Hemi by Ed Pink with a 2-speed manual transmission. In Irwindale, California on October 31, 1970 it ran a 708. The Jim Powley Yankee Packrat is owned by Jim Powley from Springfield, Illinois. The 1973 Chevrolet Vega by Woody Gilmore is powered by a supercharged Nitro 480 Keith Black Iron Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission. On September 1, 1973 it ran a 652 in Indianapolis. This is King Rat, owned by Gervis O'Neill from Gardena, California. The 1972 Chevrolet Camaro is powered by a supercharged Nitro 454 Chevrolet with a 2-speed manual transmission. At Orange County, California on May 26, 1973 it ran a 690 at 184 miles per hour. This is Mr. T, owned by Vic Morse from Costa Mesa, California. The 1970 Chevrolet Corvette by Dick Fletcher was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi by Keith Black with an automatic transmission. At Orange County in 1970 it ran a 736. Here is Miss STP, owned by Paula Murphy from Granada Hills, California. The 1971 Plymouth Duster by RCS Romeo Palamides was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi by Jack Bynum with a 2-speed manual transmission. An early 1973 issue of National Dragster claimed her best time of 1972 was a 672 at 217 miles per hour. I read where the car was later sold to the Hounddog team in Britain. This is the Wise Speed Shop 1971 Chevrolet Camaro owned by Radisai and Wise from St. Louis, Missouri. Powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission in 1971 it ran a best of 692. This is Motown Shaker owned by Al Bergler from Detroit, Michigan. The 1972 Vega had a Loggy chassis, J&E body, Kirby paint, Keith Black Hemi with a Lenco 2-speed transmission. In May of 1972 in Long Island, New York it ran a 655 at 220 miles per hour. This is Super Twister owned by Bob Haskett and Joe Petroselli from Massapequa, New York. The 1968 Chevrolet Corvair by Loggy Stamping Company is powered by a supercharged Nitro 427 Chevrolet with an automatic transmission. In 1969 it ran a 749 at 189 miles per hour in Gainesville, Florida. The car was wrecked at Cecil County Dragway and was rebuilt using a Camaro body. Here is the KNG Frantic Ford owned by Jim Fox from Broomall, Pennsylvania. The 1969 Ford Mustang by Loggy Stamping Company is powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission. On September 20, 1970 at Epping, New Hampshire it ran a 773 at 200 miles per hour. This is the Littlefield and Sublette car from Long Beach, California. The 1973 Chevrolet Vega was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission. On January 28, 1973 it ran a 666 in Phoenix, Arizona. This is the CNO automotive car owned by Gene Conway from Inglewood, California. The 1968 Pontiac Firebird by Chuck Finders is powered by a supercharged 392 Chrysler Hemi with an automatic transmission. On March 30, 1968 at Long Beach it ran a 818 at 173 miles per hour. Here is the Fiberglass Trends car owned by Marv Eldridge from Anaheim, California. The 1969 AMC Javelin by Exhibition Engineering is powered by a supercharged Nitro 392 Chrysler Hemi. In 1969 it ran a 748 at 193 miles per hour. This is Rapid Transit owned by Mert Littlefield from Long Beach, California. Shown here at Lyons, the 1969 Dodge Dart by Thane Porlier is powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission. In 1970 it ran a 763. I saw this flyer and I thought I would put it in. Can you imagine sitting in the stands at Lyons watching 32 funny cars in one night? Here is a flyer from Orange County. There were 100 funny cars at this event. I don't think there are 100 running quarter-mile nitro funny cars in the United States today, let alone show up for one event. Here is the Proud American owned by Ed Carter from Newark, California. The 1969 Chevrolet Corvette is powered by a supercharged Nitro 392 Chrysler Hemi by Del Doss with a 2-speed manual transmission. In 1969 at Lyons it ran a 756. This is Fighting Irish owned by Tim Beebe and Dick Rosberg from Michigan. The 1970 Chevrolet Camaro was powered by a supercharged Nitro Chrysler Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission. In 1971 at Irwindale, California it ran a 705. Here is Ray Alley's Engine Masters owned by Ray Alley from Garden Grove, California. The 1972 Dodge Charger by John Butera was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi by Engine Masters with a 2-speed manual transmission. In 1972 at Orange County it ran a 661. This is the Candies and Hughes car owned by Paul Candies and Leonard Hughes from Houma, Louisiana. The 1971 Plymouth Cuda by Woody Gilmore was powered by a supercharged Nitro 474 Hemi by Keith Black with a 2-speed manual transmission. In 1971 at the Orange County Manufacturers Meet it ran a 674 at 221 miles per hour. Here is the Headhunter owned by Ray Capps from Dallas, Texas. The 1966 Dodge Charger was powered by an injected Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi by Ray Capps with an automatic transmission. There is not much information on the car. That is probably the lowest chop top I have ever seen on a race car. This is Mako Shark owned by Kerry Aftel from Burbank, California. The 1968 Chevrolet Corvette by Ron Scrima, Exhibition Engineering was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi. In 1969 it ran a 737. Here is Mr. Pickett owned by Bob Pickett from Los Angeles, California. The 1970 AMC Javelin by Dick Fletcher was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi with a manual transmission. The last event this car ever competed in was the Big Four Championships at Orange County. On May 2, 1970 Bob ran 745 at 195 miles per hour in the first round while beating Ron Leslie's Cougar, but at the top end of the track the Javelin became airborne. The car came down hard and was totally destroyed. Bob survived the crash but was knocked unconscious and suffered a broken back. This is Tom and Jerry's Nightmare owned by Tom Woodbridge and Jerry Baltas from Arlington, Virginia. The 1973 Plymouth Duster by Woody Gilmore was powered by a supercharged Nitro 417 Donovan Hemi by a Bill Levitt with a 2-speed manual transmission. On June 21, 1975, running in the IHRA in Bristol, Tennessee, it ran a 670 at 217 miles per hour. Here is Beware, owned by Ron Pellegrini from Berwyn, Illinois. The 1968 Buick Skylark by Romeo Palamides was powered by a supercharged Nitro 392 Chrysler Hemi. In 1968 it ran a 770 at 190 miles per hour. Due to chassis issues, Pellegrini ended up barrel rolling it at 175 miles per hour at Rockford, now Byron Dragway, shortly after its debut. I read, according to Pellegrini, he decided at that point he was a car owner, but no longer a driver. This is Keaton's Cougar, owned by D. Keaton from Long Beach, California. The 1968 Mercury Cougar was powered by a supercharged Nitro 427 Ford SOHC with an automatic transmission. It ran a 793 at Irwindale, California, August 3, 1968. Here is the Tyree Headers Mr. Pontiac car, owned by Jess Tyree from Fullerton, California. The 1969 Pontiac Firebird by Jess Tyree was powered by a supercharged Nitro 428 Pontiac with an automatic transmission. In 1970 it ran a 732 at 204 miles per hour. This is the Hot Wheels Snake 2, owned by Don Prudhomme from Granada Hills, California. The 1970 Plymouth Cuda by John Butera was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi by Keith Black with a 2-speed manual transmission. In early 1971 at Orange County it ran a 662 at 226 miles per hour. Here is the Flying Dutchman, owned by Al Vanderwood from Bellflower, California. The 1968 Dodge Charger was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi with an automatic transmission. In 1969 it ran a 790 at 186 miles per hour in Phoenix, Arizona. This is LA Hooker, owned by the Beaver Brothers and Dave Condit from Downey, California. This 1971 Ford Maverick was built by S&R Race Cars. It was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi by Keith Black with a 2-speed manual transmission. In 1971 it ran a 684 at 217 miles per hour. This was the Beaver Brothers' second funny car and cost $12,500 to build. Here is the Dragon Vega, owned by Mart Higginbotham from Carrollton, Texas. The 1971 Chevrolet Vega by Don Long and was powered by a supercharged Nitro 473 Keith Black Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission. In 1971 it ran a 666 at 217 miles per hour. This is Brand X, owned by David Seen and Cecil Langford from San Antonio, Texas. The 1971 Ford Mustang by Don Hardy was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi by Ramchargers with a 2-speed manual transmission. On March 20, 1972 in Gainesville, Florida it ran a 747 at 192 miles per hour. Here is Mr. Norm's Supercharger, owned by Norm Kraus from Chicago, Illinois. The 1969 Dodge Charger by Logie Stamping Company was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi by Gary Dyer with an automatic transmission. The white band you see on the car was used to mask a fiberglass repair. This is Eliminator 2, owned by Don Nicholson from Atlanta, Georgia. The 1967 Mercury Comet by Logie Stamping Company was powered by a supercharged Nitro 427 Ford SOHC by Earl Wade with an automatic transmission. On July 7, 1967 in Lakeland, Florida it ran a 799. Here is the Travelin' Javelin, owned by Gary Crane from Hawthorne, California. The 1969 AMC Javelin by Exhibition Engineering was powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi with a manual transmission. In 1969 at Orange County it ran a 769 at 189 miles per hour. This is California Camaro, owned by Mike Thermos from San Pedro, California. The 1968 Chevrolet Camaro was powered by a supercharged Nitro 354 Chrysler Hemi by Paul Gami with a 2-speed manual transmission. On June 28, 1969 at Lyons it ran a 829 at 136 miles per hour. Here is Coleman's Super Ford, owned by Sidney Foster from Gretna, Louisiana. The 1969 Ford Mustang was powered by a supercharged Nitro 427 Ford SOHC with an automatic transmission. Claire Sanders from San Jose, California is shown here driving the car. This is Color Me Gone, owned by Roger Lindemood from Warren, Michigan. The 1966 Dodge Charger by J. Howell is powered by a supercharged Nitro 426 Chrysler Hemi with an automatic transmission. On July 22, 1967 in Cecil County, Maryland it ran a 815. Here is the CKC car, owned by Fritz Callier and J.E. Christek from San Antonio, Texas. The 1968 Chevrolet Camaro by Don Hardy was powered by a supercharged Nitro 454 Chevrolet by J.E. Christek with a manual transmission. It ran a 746 at Rockingham, North Carolina in September 1969. This is the Chapman Performance Stampede 1969 Mustang, owned by Dick Luer from Lansing, Michigan. The car was built by Chapman Automotive. It was powered by a supercharged Nitro 427 Ford SOHC by John Skiba with an automatic transmission. An early 1970 issue of National Dragster had an article on Luer which mentioned that he had run a best time of 7:20 at 205 miles per hour in this car. Here is the Fireball Vega owned by Gary Phillips and Jim Shores from Boynton Beach, Florida. The 1973 Chevrolet Vega by Logie Stamping Company was powered by a supercharged Nitro 484 Ed Pink Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission. On September 15, 1973 at Atco, New Jersey it ran a 648 at 227 miles per hour. This is the Boss Bird, owned by Arnie Beswick from Morrison, Illinois. The 1970 Pontiac Firebird by Logie Stamping Company was powered by a supercharged Nitro 428 Pontiac by Arnie Beswick with an automatic transmission. In 1971 in Byron, Illinois it ran a 709. Here is the Diamond Jim Annan, owned by Jim Annan from Los Angeles, California. The 1970 Dodge Challenger by Woody Gilmore and powered by a supercharged Nitro 473 Ed Pink Hemi with an automatic transmission. On December 5, 1970 at Orange County it ran a 699 at 212 miles per hour. This is the Kelly Chadwick car owned by Kelly Chadwick from Florida, Texas. The 1971 Chevrolet Camaro by Don Hardy was powered by a supercharged Nitro 427 Chevrolet by Kelly Chadwick with a 2-speed manual transmission. In November 1971 at Orange County it ran a 673 at 212 miles per hour. Here is the Revol Hawaiian owned by Roland Leong from Diamond Bar, California. The 1973 Dodge Charger by John Butera was powered by a supercharged Nitro 484 Keith Black Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission. I read where it ran a 653 in Portland in 1973. This is Jungle Jim owned by Jim Lieberman from Westchester, Pennsylvania. The 1970 Chevrolet Camaro by the Logie Stamping Company was powered by a supercharged Nitro 392 Chrysler with an automatic transmission. On September 20, 1970 at Epping, New Hampshire it ran a 699 at 214 miles per hour. Here is Machine Gun Kelly, owned by Barry Kelly from New York. The 1968 Chevrolet Corvair by Ron Scrima, Exhibition Engineering was powered by a supercharged Nitro 468 Chevrolet with a 2-speed manual transmission. On August 1, 1970 at Irwindale, California it ran a 799. Here is Bounty Huntress, owned by Connie Coletta from Mount Clemens, Michigan. The Ford Mustang by John Butera was powered by a supercharged Nitro 482 Keith Black Hemi with a 2-speed manual transmission. The car was driven by Shirley Muldowney from Schenectady, New York. On August 20, 1972 the car was destroyed at the IHRA Dragway 42, putting Muldowney in the hospital with burns. This is the Chi-Town Hustler, owned by John Farconas, Austin Coyle and Pat Minnick from Chicago, Illinois. The 1971 Dodge Challenger by Romeo Palamides and powered by a supercharged Nitro 477 Chrysler Hemi by Austin Coyle with a 2-speed manual transmission. On November 18, 1972 in Ontario, California it ran a 656. In the early to mid-70s the popularity of funny cars was becoming drag racing's most fan-favorite class. So I'll close with this. This was a time in drag racing where you saw every make and model being represented. Ford, Chevy, AMC, Pontiac and Chrysler engines all had nitro running through them. Match racing was at its peak and every track owner wanted funny cars as part of their weekend show. As always, thanks for watching.